He knelt alone in the dust, one hand on the trembling skin of a baby elephant. Blood soaked its bandaged leg, and 20,000 pounds of wild instinct stood watching him. A full herd, silent, surrounded, no fences, no guns, just him. And not one of them moved, not even to breathe. People say animals can't feel what we feel, that they don't remember, don't forgive. But what happened that day, no one could explain. And when the video went viral, some called it a miracle, others called it a lie. But what they discovered about the man behind that moment, that changed everything. Drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. We're diving deep into this one. Jason Keller never really planned to disappear. He just wanted the noise to stop. The emails, the alarms, the boardroom silence when he spoke too passionately, the fake smiles in glass offices, the pit in his stomach every time he opened his phone and saw another text from his ex-wife about how their daughter didn't want to talk to him this week either. That kind of life can hollow you out. You don't even notice it happening. You get used to it. Until one day you're looking at yourself in the mirror and realize the guy staring back has no idea who he is. That's when he left. Sold what he could, burned the rest, and drove south until the road got rough and the cell service stopped working. That's how he ended up at Pine River Wildlife Reserve, a scattered stretch of dry land in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, where the closest town had more tractors than people, and the sanctuary staff looked at him like he was either running from something or pretending to be someone. Maybe both. He didn't blame them. His resume didn't exactly scream elephant guy. Nah, but Jason didn't talk about where he came from. He showed up, worked hard, kept quiet, and the animals, they didn't care what he used to be. They just knew when someone meant no harm. There was something calming about the rhythm of life there. Feedings at dawn, medical rounds at noon, evenings with the herds as they walked slowly under the peach-colored sky. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of breathing and watching and living. That's where he met Daryl, a wiry old caretaker with a cane, a limp and a story for every scar. Daryl didn't talk much either, but when he did, it mattered. He saw something in Jason, long before anyone else did, called him the listener. But not everyone bought into Jason's quiet charm. Emily Rhodes, the head vet, made sure of that. She was smart, clinical, and always seemed 2 steps ahead of everyone. Years in the field had made her sharp and fast, with animals and people. To her, Jason was an outsider with a soft heart and no formal training. A risk, and she didn't have time for risks, especially not with the poaching problems creeping closer to the reserve. That's what made the call that morning so tense. It came in early, barely 6 a.m. A local farmer had spotted a young elephant limping near the road, bleeding badly. The sanctuary's team gathered in the small operations room, blinking into the fluorescent light, coffee still warm in their hands. "We can't just rush out there," Emily said flatly. "It could be a trap. Poachers have used injured animals before to lure rescuers." Jason looked at the map, then at the clock. "If we wait too long, it'll bleed out." Emily crossed her arms. "And if we go in blind, we walk into a bullet." No one moved. Not even Daryl. Jason stood. "I'll go, alone." It wasn't bravado, it wasn't drama, it was just calm, final. He grabbed a med pack, loaded a cooler of supplies into one of the sanctuary's older jeeps, and drove off down the gravel road without looking back. The air was hot, even for early morning. Dust curled around the tires as he drove. Jason wasn't thinking about risk. He was thinking about the calf, about how helpless a wild creature becomes when it's in pain, about the fear it must be feeling. When he found it, crumpled under a bent fence line, its leg caught in rusted steel, it was worse than he'd expected. The trap had sliced deep. Blood darkened the dirt. Its eyes were wide, but there was no scream. No thrashing. He moved slowly, dropped to his knees, spoke softly, nonsense words, just to fill the space. The calf didn't fight. When he touched its side, it flinched but didn't retreat. There's a moment, when fear meets recognition, that can't be faked. Jason felt it. He cut the trap loose, cleaned the wound as best he could, wrapped the leg with gauze and tension bandages. He poured water into his hands and let the calf drink, and then he sang. Not well, just quietly. The only song he could think of, a lullaby he used to hum when Eliza was small. The elephant calmed, and in that moment, Jason forgot the road, the job, the stares from the other staff. It was just him and this broken little creature, watching each other, breathing together. By the time he drove back, the sun was high and nerves were tight at the sanctuary. Emily met him at the gate. "You went alone?" "I did." "You transported an injured wild animal without proper containment?" "I did." "You broke 3 protocols." "I know. But the calf, now named Naya by Malik, the youngest trainee, survived the night. It didn't cry, didn't lash out. It ate. It healed, and when Jason came near, it lifted its trunk and leaned gently into his side. The staff started whispering. Malik was convinced the elephant knew something. Daryl just smiled and said, "Some animals remember kindness longer than people do." But Emily wasn't convinced. She warned Jason not to confuse behavior with emotion. "They're animals," she said. "They don't bond, they adapt." Jason didn't argue, he just kept showing up. Then something strange happened. 3 nights later, the baby elephant escaped its pen. Cameras caught it walking straight to Jason's cabin, curling up in the dust just outside his door. No sound, no panic, just presence. The staff found them there in the morning, Jason asleep on the porch steps, Naya snoring beside him like a 1,000-pound puppy. After that, the herd came. Not just 1 or 2, but all of them, the entire matriarchal group. They approached the outer fence each morning, silent, deliberate. They never came that close before, never stayed that long. They didn't trumpet or pace, they just watched. Jason would stand outside with Nia by his side, not speaking, not moving. The elephants never crossed the boundary, but they stayed, some days for hours. Daryl started calling them the Watchers. Emily got nervous. Too much attention, too unpredictable. She suggested relocating Nia back to the inner field, limiting Jason's access. Malik was furious. "She's not a science project," he said. "She's alive." Emily didn't budge. "She's a wild animal. And this is still a sanctuary, not a storybook." But the story was already being written. One morning, a tourist caught a video of Jason standing alone in the field, surrounded by the full herd, Nia leaning into him, the matriarch towering behind. No one attacked, no one charged. They just stood there, all of them, like guardians. The video blew up online within hours. Back at the sanctuary, chaos broke out. Journalists called, biologists weighed in. Some said it was imprinting behavior. Others insisted it was coincidence. Emily warned it could bring dangerous attention. But what none of them knew, not yet, was that the herd wasn't just watching. They were waiting, and that Jason would only begin to understand in the days to come. For days after the video went viral, the sanctuary didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. Journalists called non-stop. Wildlife organizations requested interviews. Documentarians sent proposals. And through all of it, Jason stayed quiet. He showed up to feed Nia every morning, walked the perimeter with Daryl, helped Malik clean the water systems, and kept a respectful distance from the herd, even when they drew close. The team had split down the middle, those who saw something extraordinary in what happened between Jason and the elephants, and those, like Emily, who still believed it was all coincidence, a chain of behavioral conditioning misread as emotion. But even Emily had stopped arguing out loud. The footage had spoken for itself, a grown herd of African elephants in the wild, voluntarily gathering around a man with no barrier, no food, no threat, just presence. And when the matriarch had lowered her head to his, softly, like a bow, people around the world had started asking questions no one could answer. Jason never wanted that moment filmed. He never even knew the camera was rolling. But when he saw the clip for the first time, alone in his cabin late at night, he felt the weight of it settle into his chest. Not because it was beautiful or viral, but because he realized how much had passed between him and those animals that he could never explain. What happened in that field wasn't magic, it was trust, built slowly, without words, without need. And now, millions of people had opinions on something they couldn't possibly understand. He felt exposed, seen in a way he didn't ask for, and somewhere, deep in that exposure, something inside him began to shift. He hadn't spoken to his daughter in over 11 months. Their last call ended with her hanging up, frustrated, angry at how he had walked away from everything. He had wanted to explain that walking away wasn't quitting, it was surviving, but he had never found the words. Until now. After the second round of press interviews came through, someone reached out on his behalf to her mother. A week later, Jason received a voice note. 14 seconds, just Eliza's voice, quiet, unsure, asking, "Hey, is it true about the elephants?" That was all it took. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked out to where Nia was sleeping under the shade of the big tree near the western field. Her leg was nearly healed. She moved with a slight limp, but her eyes were bright, alert, full of something unspoken. He sat beside her, like he always did, and started talking. Not about her, but about himself, about how he had failed at being the man everyone expected, about how he built a life with status but no meaning, about how it took silence and soil and one injured animal to remember who he really was. Nia didn't move, didn't blink. She just listened. That same afternoon, Emily called a meeting, not with hostility, but clarity. She had been approached by a federal wildlife agency. They wanted Jason to become part of a new interspecies research program, an initiative based on the growing field of emotional co-regulation between humans and highly intelligent animals. She said his bond with Nia and the herd had made people rethink what's possible in trauma recovery and conservation. They offered him a role as liaison, a bridge between worlds, and the sanctuary would receive funding to expand and protect more land. Jason looked at her, trying to read her expression. There was no challenge in her eyes anymore, just recognition, respect finally given, and underneath it, a question. Would he stay? But before he could answer, something happened that none of them expected. Nia began to wander further from the sanctuary's central grounds, not aimlessly, but with purpose, toward the forest boundary, toward the open land, and the herd followed. Slowly, day by day, they moved as if preparing to leave. Jason felt a tension inside him he hadn't felt since arriving, a fear of loss. He had saved her. He had found meaning again through her. Was she leaving him behind? One morning at sunrise, Jason followed her into the outer field. She stopped and turned. He froze. The herd formed behind her, silent, watching. Nia stepped closer. She touched his chest with her trunk. It was the same gesture the matriarch had given him weeks before. And in that moment, Jason understood. She wasn't leaving him behind. She was returning to where she belonged, and she was saying goodbye. He stood there as the herd turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees, dust rising behind them like memory. No one spoke, not Daryl, not Malik, not even Emily. The silence was heavy but not empty. It was full of something bigger than words. Letting go is never easy, but sometimes it's the final act of love. Jason didn't take the government position. He recommended Emily instead. She accepted. He stayed at the sanctuary, but not to lead anything. He stayed because the place had become part of him, and he wasn't ready to say goodbye to that. He began to work with younger volunteers, not as an expert, but as someone who had learned how to listen. He finally saw Eliza again, months later. She flew down during her spring break. When she stepped onto the sanctuary grounds and saw her father in boots and dirt-stained clothes, holding a rescued barn owl in his arms, she smiled for the first time in years. Not because he had changed, but because he had come home to himself. There were no more viral videos, no more articles, just the work, the rhythm, the sun rising and falling over fields of dust and life. The baby elephant didn't come back. But sometimes, when Jason walked alone at dawn, he swore he could feel her watching from the trees. And that was enough. If this story touched you, drop the word healing in the comments. Because sometimes healing doesn't come loud or fast. It comes when we finally sit still long enough to be seen. There is a story here on the screen that will also move you. Press to watch. You won't regret it.
Have you noticed something's changed? Your energy isn't the same, your desire fades, and your nights are constantly interrupted by trips to the bathroom. The truth? It might have nothing to do with age, but with a hidden clog putting pressure on your prostate and disrupting your body from the inside out. On small islands in Asia, men stay active and sleep deeply well into their 80s. Their secret? A natural formula packed with potent nutrients that help restore flow, recharge libido, and revive vitality. Thousands are already feeling the difference. Click the link in the comments and see why this could be the fresh start your body's been waiting for.